my plan was, Rob, like that's what I really want to talk about is the new and exciting stuff. But you just laid out like all this amazing stuff that you've been working on. And I mean, it seems kind of cliche, but I got to know, like, what came first? How did you get started? Was it the catering? You know, how did all this happen?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, this is what I've always done. I've done this for, I guess I'm 43 now, so I've been working in restaurants since I was 12. So it's always been a passion. And I guess about 25 years ago, let's see, yeah, probably about that time I started getting really serious with it. And, you know, through school and through everything, I graduated Northwestern High School here. And then from high school, I went to Columbia, or from Charleston to Columbia, and then to the other side of Raleigh, and then the other side of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I spent about 11 years in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I was able to work with some really cool people and as the executive chef of some really fun places in a high-end catering business for a number of years. And in 2011, I was chosen to go, or asked to go over and represent the United States of America on Iron Chef, basically, called 59, a television show called 59 Minutes, which is their syndication of Iron Chef over on the eastern side of the world. And so I went to Dubai and played in Dubai for a week. And then from Dubai, I hopped a plane and landed in Kabul, Afghanistan in 2011 during the middle of the war.
What?
And yeah, and it was nuts. And I think that's a whole podcast in itself, and about 3,000 pictures and just nuts. So I represented the United States of America against the golden chef of Afghanistan, Chef Safi at the time. And that was really, really exciting. But thank God, came back from that. That was really fun. Again, that is a whole other story we could get into.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
Next time you're in Counter, there's all kind of stuff on the walls that you can read about it. And I can actually probably dig out an old disc that we could watch and crack a couple beers and have fun doing that one night. But so then I moved to Charlotte, and I moved back to Charlotte to open Heist Brewery, actually in Noda.
When was that?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, so I left in 97, came back in 2012, worked with Heist for a couple years, built their culinary program, built their event program, and then I said, you know, this is just something that I just need to be able to do for myself. So I called some clients, and I talked to some folks and some friends, and everybody said, hey, Chef, I don't care who we write a check to as long as you're doing it. And I said, cool, that was the boost of confidence that I needed. So I went down to the bank, opened a business account with $500. Only $500 I had, and started Create Experiences. And Create Experiences opened in the end of 2014. It was established, I should say. And I had some jobs lined up, and I just went on hope and prayer, no investors, no anything like that. And that's kind of how that started with Create. Bid a job for at the Aviation Museum in Charlotte, and American Airlines and MasterCard liked what I threw out there so much, they asked me if I could recreate that at a lot of venues around the country. And I did. And they paid me a lot of money to do that. And that's how I got started. And so instead of just wasting the money, I reinvested in it in rentals and different things, and decor, and built bars and built things and bought vehicles, and to be able to do what I needed to do. And that's kind of how Create started. And Create is the mother company of everything else that we do, to answer that question directly. So Create, then we started Twisted Eats, or I started Twisted Eats. That's a great story. We were doing an event in Wooden Robot I think it was for Wells Fargo, and I was talking to Josh and Dan, the owners of Wooden Robot, and I'm a firm believer that some of the best business decisions happened over a cocktail or a couple beers. And I think beer one, we were talking, and it was like, yeah, you know, we should figure it. They were like, we need to find a food truck that can come here. Beer two was like, have you ever worked on a food truck? And I was like, no, I've never even eaten off a food truck. I think by beer three, I decided to buy a food truck. And by beer four, I decided 100% to buy a food truck, and I was going to make everything with their beer. So that's how Twisted Eats was born. And the following week, I found a food truck, bought the food truck. 3 weeks later, it was permitted, and it was sitting outside on the corner of Winifred Street and trying to sling food for Wooden Robot.
Now, what do you mean you were going to make everything with their beer?
So we were making all of our sauces with their beer, all our pastas with their beer. We were doing breads and different things, and we were going to sell it on the food truck. It was a great concept. Yeah. It was super cool. It was Charlotte's first craft beer food truck. And And then, so we sat out there on the corner and slung no food for a little while. I mean, $75 a day or here and there, just nothing a lot, right? And then it just, over time, I believed it was consistency. You know, I was not in the market to move my food truck around and like try to find this place and that place and go different places every day. So through consistency and quality of product, we were able to build the brand. And thank goodness I had Create to, help pay the bills as well. Because we were busy with catering and events as well. So that's how Twisted Eats was born. And I think I think our first year out of the gate on Twisted Eats, I think we sold, I don't know, over $800,000 worth of food.
Wow.
Off the side of the street.
Out of trucks.
Yeah, out of a trailer. Yeah, it was cool. Real cool. So that was very humbling. It was really neat. But again, it was able, I mean, that pays bills, that pays people, right? And then through the catering, through the events, I ended up down in Seaside, Florida, and doing we had a big wedding down there. So it took, a number of site visits, a number of trips down there. We were big event, big wedding, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday brunch type of scenario. And then through that, long story short, I became business partners with the bride and groom. So, because they had vacation.
On the third beer or fourth beer?
You know what? That's a good question. But no, we decided to do something, and we said, hey, let's do something. It would be great to do one of these Airstreams one day. Because they had been vacationing there for years. I had only been there 5 or 6 times at this point, but I'd spent a lot of time there during those 5 or 6 times. And so they were like, all right, well, we'll talk about it down the road. We tabled it. So about 6-7 months later, we picked it back up, and their father had been a client. His firm had been one of my largest clients for many years at that point, or a few years at that point, I should say. And so then we decided to do it. So we bought a Airstream, an old 1975 Tradewind 25, and had it converted, shipped it here, bought it online, sight unseen, had it shipped here to Charlotte, converted it to a creperie, shipped it down, and it never moves. It's part of a little place called Airstream Row in Seaside, Florida. I need you to Google it and look it up. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then we did such a great job there doing that Seaside actually asked us if we wanted to do a second concept about 1.5 years later. So we did a Cuban concept across the street. And that's a brick and mortar. So that is how we got into Seaside, or I got into Seaside. And then while I was there, Alicia Fernandez, my director of operations, called me and said, hey, chef, there's something you've always wanted to do something in Rock Hill. There's a spot that is available. So I don't know if you want to look at it. So, excuse me, we set it up and came down to look at it. And it was the old Palmetto room in the back, which is now the gathering space. And then we went forward, and it was the old Five and Dime that was closed down for 2.5 years, I think, at that point. And boom. And that's how Counter kind of got started. And then I guess the world shut down because that was right at, I think I signed the lease and everything on, I think, March 15th, something like that. And I think, literally that's when, everybody thought the zombies were going to come for us, the following week. It was, that scary time.
Brutal.
And so I was working with a local bank at that point, and we were all done. We had been working on this for months, and they were like, cool. And all of a sudden COVID happened. They were like, pause. Yeah, everything stopped. We're like, okay, no small business loans, no anything right now. Everything's on pause. I was like, well, that stinks because we were not on pause yesterday.
Yeah.
And so Create paid for everything at Counter. So I paid cash for the entire upfit, the entire everything. So
you had to really.
So
go
I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in, man. It's that was it. There was nothing. I mean, I went through a divorce in 2020. I went all in on Counter in 2020. I mean, 2020 was an exciting year to say the least. But on December 15th, 2020, we were able to open, and it was awesome. It was really cool. We opened at the right time.
Yeah.
We had the holiday bug. People were ready for Christmas. It was the election was over. No matter what side of the coin you stood on, at that point, it didn't matter. It was just over.
Yeah.
And the vaccine was poking its head out, and so people were ready to get moving around. And we did a lot of great training, had some great media nights, brought in the right influencers, and we opened on all cylinders, and it was really cool. And we were pretty busy from day one.